Okay, welcome back to the secret underground lair. So our stain has set up overnight, and looking at it, I'm thinking that I probably put a little bit too much ebony on top of the black, or too much ebony on top of the Grey Willow that was down. But let's just give this a little sand off and see what we get. The grain is exposed quite nicely through here, and same on this piece, the grain is quite nice. And on this piece, where I didn't get quite so much ebony down, I kind of like the look right there. This is a little dark, but let's just do a little sand and see what we get. And this is just very little pressure. Actually, I like that. I like that look. So with a little dark ebony on top of that, and if I'm a little bit random in my approach here to sanding, we'll get a little bit more of a weathered feel to the piece. I think that might work out okay. We'll wipe all these guys down too when we're done. You can certainly see here where the raised grain had an effect. So this portion here was certainly raised up, quite a bit of raising in there. You can see more raising that happened through here. So interesting, very interesting effect. And even on this piece, I'll try and zoom in a little bit so you can see this. So you can see where the pores of the wood are throughout here. And the grain raised all around the pores, so the stain has sunk in there quite a bit. Okay, I'm going to wipe them down. And we're just going to do a little bit of streaking with more ebony. Just using a paper towel here. I'm not using anything fancy. It's just a clean towel. Okay, and what I'm going to be using to put the ebony on top of this is a foam brush. Okay, put on some gloves this time. Thanks, John. And there's not a lot of stain left in this particular can, so I am going after the dregs here, but as I mentioned, I'm just going to be using some strokes to darken up the piece. And I might give that a little rub a little later on as it gets closer to dry. Okay, I'm going to let that sit for a little while. and come back and rub that just to kind of get rid of the hard lines. But that gives us a little bit more variation, so you can see we've got some grays and blacks mixed in there. Yeah, we'll give that a little chance to set. I'll come back in a minute. Okay, I've let this sit for about 5 minutes. In fact, it is 5 minutes now. So I'm just going to do a little bit of brushing with this. Again, I'm using a paper towel here. What I'm looking to do is just kind of mute the streaks a little bit, but leave some of the gray in place, like that. I think I could probably let it go for a little bit longer than 5 minutes. Depends how heavily that the ebony went down, I think, to a large degree. So I'm just going to let this sit for another 2 minutes. We'll come back and do that. All right, I've given this another 2 minutes, so let's just give this a fresh cloth here. Let's just see what we get. And I think that is precisely the look I'm going for. Not too sure how well that's going to show up with reflections. But there are some dark gray streaks through the wood, which kind of resemble some weathering. The original inspiration for this weathering technique actually came from working with some tobacco kiln pine, and we retained a very rough texture, a surfaced texture, used a wire wheel on that, and then used the same kind of staining technique. Of course, on that kind of a surface, it's much easier to get the gray to sink into the valleys, because the valleys are really pronounced. They can be a 1/16, sometimes even an 1/8 of an inch deep. So like very textured surface. So trying to do something similar on a smooth surface is a little bit more tricky, but that was the inspiration behind it. Overall, I think that will work. So I'm just going to let this set up and get a second opinion. And if all is good, then we'll proceed with doing the entire piece. All right, console table is back up onto the workbench. And before we do the staining, there was a little bit of an adjustment that needed to be made to the drawers. So the piece has been climatizing in the house for the last 2 weeks. So it's kind of settled where it's going to settle when it gets into a living accommodation. And what I have here is just the gap on the top of the drawer, on the left drawer, is just a little too narrow. So I'm going to use a hand plane and just take a little bit off that and probably even up this line here. This is also just a little bit narrow. So I'm going to this is a little bit narrow, so I'm going to even that up, particularly down on this end. And one other little complication that I've got is that this drawer, because the top actually has a little bit of a warp to it, or a curve to it, the top of this drawer here and the back of the drawer bind a little bit. So I'm going to take, not this much, but I'm going to skim just a little bit off there with a plane across this side and across the back. The left side seems to be fine. It's just this one side that's a little bit low. And this drawer too is just fine. It's working well. Sorry. So this drawer is working well. Happy with the movement on that. So it's just this drawer to adjust a little bit on the just this drawer to adjust a little bit on the sides, and this drawer to adjust a little bit off the front, top left. So I'm going to take the drawers out, make that little adjustment, go over everything again with some 220 because I did notice on the piece itself there's a couple glue marks left over. So there's going to be more sanding on this before we do the stain, but we'll be doing stain today. So I was using my little hand plane on the left-hand drawer, and I thought, well, I'll take a couple strokes off it just to kind of get the feel, then I'll film it. And by the time I'd taken a couple strokes off it, it was done. So I thought, well, I better set you up to watch this one go. This is the middle drawer, so I'm going to take a little bit off this side and a little bit off the back. And not the whole way. I'm going to leave the front here as is. The challenge, of course, is getting on the back here. Where coming across the plane this way, it wants to rip that off. So have to be kind of careful with that. It's going to take a little bit off that. Have to go too deep, but I'm going to go just a couple more strokes beyond that. Give that a test fit before we're done. So we'll go with that and give it a try. I'm just going to sand this down with some 120. Oh, I take that back, I'm doing 180. And I do need to go over all the drawers just to kind of break the edge again, as we did on the other pieces. Another thing I found very useful is just these little fridge dishes. You know, it comes with butter, actually, a little butter dish, or spreadable. But little yogurt containers, any kind of container like that, just having a few of those around is really handy when you're taking stuff apart. Just put the screws in there, and then they're not rolling around the tabletop or the counter or something, and you lose them. Okay, we'll set that in and see what it looks like. So that middle drawer in place, I need just a little bit more taken off the top of that drawer. It's just touching as it goes. And the side, I can probably take just a little bit more off that side too. It gets a little close. It's just right up here where the top is down. So I need to take a little bit more off, basically from where I have that, almost from the very front. It's right in here that it sags. The top sags a little bit. So I'm just going to take a little bit more off there. I don't want to be sanding the top per se. So I'm going to take it off the drawer. I'm happy with the fit of the drawers. This one looks a little tight, but when the screws are in, it pulls it down nicely. That one has a nice gap at that end. This drawer opens and closes well. So I think we are ready to certainly stain the drawers. So first I'm going to get a bite of lunch, and then we'll come back and start staining this piece. Have a lot of sanding to do on the cabinet itself, but I'm going to start with the drawers. Back in a bit. So I'm just taking all the drawer slides now off the drawers, Gonna again go over a quick once over with some sandpaper, make sure I have all the rough edges kind of broken. And just triple check for any glue spots, make sure that I've gotten all the glue off the drawers. All right, light sand. That's the process I'm going through for all the drawers, so just do the other two, and then we'll go over and apply some stain to these. All right, our first step with the drawers now, having gotten them all sanded down, I've blown them out, but I'm going to use a damp cloth here, just a paper towel, to do two things. One, I'm going to use the paper towel and damp towel to wipe out any residual dust, but that will also effectively let me raise the grain of this wood. Okay, so I'm just going to set that piece off to the side. My main concern when wiping down the underside is merely dust collection. I'm not so worried about raising the grain on the underside of the drawers. Okay, that's all our drawers dampened down. So I'm just going to let the water on that dry off. Then I'll come back and put down some Grey Willow. All right, I'm going to start with our right-hand drawer. Do some Grey Willow. And then I'm going to put on the Ebony. So I'm going to do both stains on this one drawer before moving on to the next drawer. Using a foam brush to apply. I'm trying to get a fairly generous coat of Grey Willow on this. And we're going to go a little bit lighter with the Ebony on top of this wet Grey Willow. We'll be using a cloth to rub this in a little bit harder. I'm just going to rub out that inside. All right, let's do the outside edges. All right, let's try a little bit of Ebony on top of that. So again, we're just going to do a little bit lighter than last time, so not nearly so much Ebony spread around. Let's see how that does. So that certainly leaves us with a lighter gray, which is what we're looking for. Happy with that. So we'll kind of continue with that degree of ebony on the surface here. Okay, do a little bit of the inside. Just quite literally just try and see how it goes. And I apologize, you won't be able to see what I'm doing here, but I'll turn it around when we're done. All right, there is a drawer done. Well, parts 1 and 2 done. Obviously. So from a color perspective, it's a little streaky. That's kind of what I'm going for. Streaky, blotchy, that's just fine. It is the top coat of the ebony that will just kind of highlight some of that streaking to give it that weathered appearance. So there's one drawer. I'm going to go through that same process for the other two. Got most of that drawer done. I haven't done the underside, but I've run out of Grey Willow, so I'm just going to run out and get some more. Be back when I can finish that drawer. So minor hiccup, I ran out of Grey Willow and my local stores don't carry this. I have to run up to the Big Orange store and pick up some of that. So I'll do that later this evening. In the meantime, I'm going to go over here to the table itself and just do a final sand to get rid of, there's some glue marks here and there, a couple nail fills. So I'll just get this piece sanded off completely ready for stain so that when I do get the Grey Willow, we can move from, finish off the drawers, we can move right to this piece. So a lot of sanding, and I'm not going to bore you with that. So today's video will be relatively short, but we are making progress. And just another little note, we picked up a whole bunch of red oak that'll be used for the nightstands. So material on hand, I'm very happy with that. Local supplier, good price. So we're on track to start on that right away. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.